On the morning of the fifth day, Danny heard the sound of engines in the distance. He ran to the edge of the clearing and saw search craft flying overhead. He lit a signal fire using damp leaves to create thick smoke. Within an hour, the rescue team landed. Captain Hart was the first one out of the shuttle. His eyes went wide when he saw Danny covered in dirt and blood standing over the wounded Krathzar. Behind the captain came several Vrelnir warriors, including Thrak from the council. By all the stars, Captain Hart breathed. "You're alive!" The Vrelnir warriors rushed to Krathzar's side. They worked quickly, applying advanced medical treatments that Danny didn't have access to. One of them turned to Danny. "You kept him alive," the warrior said. It wasn't a question. He was looking at the shelter Danny had built, the bandages, the signs of care. "I did my best," Danny said quietly. Thrak approached Danny slowly. The old warrior looked different than he had in the council chamber. There was no mockery in his four eyes now. Only something that looked like shock. "There are 2 dead Krail beasts nearby," Thrak said. "You killed them?" "One fell off a cliff," Danny explained. "Krathzar and I killed the other one together." Thrak clicked his mandibles together, the Vrelnir equivalent of shaking his head in disbelief. "Krathzar is our greatest hunter. He has survived 40 cycles of battles. Yet he would have died here if not for you. A young human with no training. No experience. How?" Danny was too tired to think of a good answer. "I just did what needed to be done." They flew back to the station. Medical teams were waiting for Krathzar. They rushed him away to intensive care. Danny was taken to a medical bay as well, though his injuries were much less severe. Cuts, bruises, dehydration. Nothing that wouldn't heal. Captain Hart sat with him while the doctors worked. "The crew wants to see you." "They've been worried sick, have they?" Danny asked. He couldn't help the doubt in his voice. The captain sighed. "I know they didn't treat you well. I should have stopped that. I'm sorry. But yes, they've been worried." Kyle barely slept. Lauren spent hours monitoring every comm channel, hoping to hear something. When Danny was released from medical care, he expected to go back to the ship and rest. Instead, a Vrelnir escort was waiting for him. They were very polite, very formal. "The council requests your presence in the Grand Hall," one of them said. "If you are well enough to attend." Danny was exhausted, but he nodded. "I can go." The walk to the Grand Hall felt different this time. Vrelnir that they passed in the corridors stopped and stared at Danny. They didn't look at him with contempt anymore. They looked at him with something else. Curiosity, maybe. Or respect. The Grand Hall was packed. It seemed like half the station's population was there. All the council members sat in their places. The human crew stood to one side. And in the center of the hall, standing despite his wounds, was Krathzar. The legendary hunter had bandages wrapped around his torso and one arm in a sling. He should have been in bed, but he stood tall and proud, his 4 eyes fixed on the entrance. When Danny walked in, the entire hall went silent. Krathzar spoke, his voice booming through the chamber. "Danny Cooper of Earth, come forward." Danny walked to the center of the hall. His legs felt weak. His heart pounded. Every eye in the massive room was on him. 5 days ago, Krathzar said, "I stood in this hall and watched as you were mocked. I said nothing. In my silence, I agreed with the judgment. I saw a weak creature unworthy of respect. I was wrong." The hunter stepped down from the platform, moving slowly because of his injuries. He stood in front of Danny. "You entered the wilderness as prey. You had no training. No experience. You should have died on the first day, but you did not die. You learned. You adapted. You survived." Krathzar's voice grew stronger. "When you found me dying, you had a choice. You could have left me and claimed victory in the hunt. You could have saved yourself. By the laws of the hunt, no one would have blamed you. But you did not leave. You risked your own life to save mine. You fought beside me. You tended my wounds. You kept me alive for days while waiting for rescue." The warrior reached up and removed something from around his neck. It was a pendant, a massive tooth from some predator, carved with symbols that Danny didn't recognize. "In my culture, we have a sacred bond. We call it Thrak Nor. It means soul brother. It is deeper than blood. It is earned only through shared survival and sacrifice. In all my 40 cycles, I have never offered this bond to anyone, not even to my own warriors." Krathzar placed the pendant around Danny's neck. The tooth hung heavy against his chest. "You are Thraknor," the hunter said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are my brother. Your strength is not in your body, but in your heart. And that is a strength worthy of the highest honor. Any who shame you, shame me. Any who threaten you, threaten me. From this day forward, you are family." The hall erupted. The Vrelnir warriors struck their spears against the floor in a rhythmic salute. The sound was like thunder. Danny stood there frozen, unable to fully process what was happening. Thrak, the council member who had mocked Danny so cruelly before, came forward. He bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect among the Vrelnir. "I judged you wrongly, young human," Thrak said. "I saw only your size and your youth. I failed to see what lay beneath. You have taught us that humans measure strength in ways we had not considered. Perhaps that is a kind of strength in itself." One by one, the council members came forward to acknowledge Danny. They spoke of courage, honor, and the bond between warriors. They spoke of how the story of the young Terran and the fierce hunter would be told for generations. Captain Hart approached with the rest of the crew. Kyle looked uncomfortable. Lauren had tears in her eyes. The captain stood at attention and saluted. "On behalf of Earth and the human delegation, I formally recognize the bond of Thraknor between Danny Cooper and Krathzar. We are honored by this gesture." Kyle stepped forward. He looked like he was forcing himself to do it. "Danny, I owe you an apology. A big one. I judged you. I treated you like you didn't matter. I was wrong." "I'm sorry," Lauren nodded. "We all were. We saw someone young and untested and decided that meant you were weak. We should have looked closer." Danny didn't know what to say. He was overwhelmed, exhausted. His emotions were a confused mess, so he just nodded and accepted their words. The ceremony continued for another hour. The Vrelnir had many rituals to honor a new Thraknor bond. Danny went through them in a daze. He ate ceremonial food that tasted like spiced leather. He listened to songs in the Vrelnir language that his translator said were about legendary warriors. He stood beside Krathzar as various Vrelnir came to pay their respects. Finally, it was over. Krathzar placed one of his massive hands on Danny's shoulder. "You must rest now, brother," the hunter said. "You have earned it." "So have you," Danny replied. "You shouldn't even be standing." Krathzar made the clicking sound that was Vrelnir laughter. "Perhaps not, but some moments are worth the pain." This was one of them. As they prepared to leave the hall, Thrak approached one more time. "The Council has decided to offer Earth the trade routes you requested. Full access through Vrelnir space, and more than that. We wish to establish an exchange program. We will send our young warriors to train with humans, and we hope you will send humans to train with us. We have much to learn from each other." Captain Hart looked stunned. "That's far more than we hoped for." "It is what you deserve," Thrak replied. "Any species that produces individuals like this young human is a species worth knowing." Back on the ship, Danny finally got to his quarters. He fell onto his bed, still wearing the pendant Krathzar had given him. He was too tired to even take off his boots. There was a knock on his door. Lauren entered carrying a tray of food. "Thought you might be hungry," she said. "Real food, not whatever they served at the ceremony." Danny sat up. "Thanks." Lauren set the tray down and sat in the small chair by his desk. "Can I say something?" "Sure." "I've been in space for 6 years," she said. "I've seen a lot of things. Met a lot of people from a lot of species. But I've never seen anything like what you did. You changed everything, Danny. Not just the trade negotiations. You changed how they see all of us. You changed how we see ourselves." "I just did what anyone would do," Danny said. "No," Lauren shook her head. "That's where you're wrong. Most people wouldn't have charged at those Krail beasts. Most people would have let Krathzar die to save themselves. You did something extraordinary, and you did it because you're a good person. That matters more than being strong or experienced or any of that stuff we judged you for." After she left, Danny ate and then lay back down. He touched the pendant around his neck. "Brother." Krathzar had called him brother. A legendary warrior who could have crushed Danny with one hand now considered him family. The stars didn't look cold anymore when Danny glanced out his window. They looked like possibilities, like new beginnings. 3 weeks had passed since the hunt. Danny stood in his new quarters aboard Korvax station. They were much larger than his tiny room on the horizon's edge. He had a real desk, a comfortable bed, even a window that looked out at the stars and the ships coming and going from the docking bays. The Vrelnir Consortium had offered him a position as a cultural liaison. His job was to help humans and Vrelnir understand each other better. Captain Hart had given his blessing, though the captain admitted he would miss having Danny on the crew. You've earned this, Hart had said. Go make us proud. Though I think you've already done that. Danny was reviewing documents on his datapad when his door chimed. Krathzar entered, moving much better than he had weeks before. The wounds had healed well, thanks to Vrelnir medical technology. He still had new scars to add to his collection, but he wore them with pride. Brother, Krathzar greeted him. I have news that will interest you. Danny set down his pad. What kind of news? The Council has approved a joint training program between our species. Young Vrelnir warriors will travel to Earth to learn from human military instructors. Young humans will come here to train in our ways. It will be the first program of its kind. Krathzar sat in a chair specially reinforced to hold his weight. They want me to develop the program, and I want you to help me lead it. Danny felt a surge of excitement. Really? You want me to help train Vrelnir warriors? I want you to teach them what you taught me, Krathzar said. That strength comes in many forms. That courage is not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. That honor means helping those in need, even when there is no benefit to yourself. These are lessons my people need to learn. Over the following months, the program took shape. The first group of human trainees arrived at Korvac Station. They were young military recruits eager to prove themselves. Danny recognized the look in their eyes. It was the same look he had once had, a mix of excitement and nervousness about being so far from home. Among them was a young woman named Amy Fletcher. She was short, barely 5'3", and looked intimidated by everything around her. The other recruits were bigger, louder, more confident. Danny saw them glance at her and then look away, dismissing her as too small or too weak. Danny knew that feeling all too well. He pulled Amy aside on her first day. How are you holding up? She tried to look confident. Fine, sir. Ready to train. You don't have to call me sir, Danny said with a smile. And you don't have to pretend. Being nervous is okay. I was terrified when I first got here. Amy looked surprised. You were? But you're the one who saved Krathzar. Everyone knows the story. Everyone knows the ending, Danny corrected. They don't know how scared I was. How many times I wanted to quit. How certain I was that I would fail. He showed her the pendant he still wore. This didn't come from being confident. It came from doing what needed to be done, even when I was terrified. Over the next few weeks, Danny watched Amy struggle with the training. The Vrelnir methods were harsh, designed for their larger, stronger bodies. The other human trainees adapted better. Some of them started to look at Amy the way Danny's old crew had looked at him. Then came the first real test. Each trainee had to complete a survival exercise in a controlled section of the wilderness zone. They would be alone for 3 days with minimal supplies. It wasn't as dangerous as Danny's hunt had been, but it was still challenging. Amy was the last to return. When she finally emerged from the wilderness, she was dirty, exhausted, and limping, but she had completed the task. The Vrelnir instructors marked her performance as barely passing. One of the other trainees, a muscular guy named Chris Porter, made a comment loud enough for everyone to hear. Maybe some people aren't cut out for this kind of work. Danny was about to intervene when Krathzar stepped forward. The legendary hunter fixed all 4 of his eyes on Chris. You completed the exercise faster than this small female, Krathzar said. This is true. But I watched all of you on the monitors. You followed the paths we expected. You did what you were trained to do. Competent but predictable. He turned to Amy. This one took a different path. When she encountered a blocked trail, she did not backtrack. She climbed. When her water ran low, she found a way to collect morning dew. She fell many times because of her size, but each time she rose again. She showed adaptability and determination. Krathzar placed a hand on Amy's shoulder. Size and strength matter in combat. But they are not everything. I learned this from another human who was told he was too small and weak. He looked at Danny. My brother taught me that the fiercest warrior is not always the largest. Sometimes it is the one who refuses to quit. After that day, the other trainees looked at Amy differently, and Chris Porter, to his credit, apologized. The training program was a success. Word of it spread throughout the Vrelnir territories and back to Earth. Other alien species heard about it too. The story of the young Terran who had saved the fierce hunter had become famous. It was used as a teaching example in diplomatic schools. Children on Earth learned about Danny Cooper in their history classes. Danny found it all a bit overwhelming. He didn't feel like a hero. He had just done what felt right. One evening, Danny received a message from Kyle Bennett. The security officer had transferred to a new ship but wanted to check in. "Hey, kid," the message said. And Danny smiled at Kyle, still calling him that. "I heard about the training program. Sounds like you're doing good work out there. I wanted you to know that what happened with you changed things for me. I spent years thinking strength was just about muscles and combat skills. You taught me different. I'm trying to be better about that. Trying to see people for who they are, not just what they look like. Thanks for that. And sorry again for being such a jerk." Danny sent back a short reply saying all was forgiven and wishing Kyle well. Then he stood and walked to his window, looking out at the stars. A year ago, he had been a scared kid carrying equipment cases and being mocked by aliens and his own crew. Now he was helping bridge the gap between two species. He was training the next generation of warriors and diplomats. He wore the pendant of Thraknor and was called brother by one of the most respected hunters in Vrelnir culture. Krathzar's voice came from behind him. Danny hadn't heard the door open. "You look thoughtful, brother." "Just thinking about how much has changed," Danny said. Krathzar joined him at the window. "Much has changed. But you have not. You are still the same person who charged at a Krail beast to save a dying warrior. Still the one who refuses to judge others by their appearance. This is good. Do not let fame change who you are." "I'll try not to," Danny promised. "The Council wants to expand the program," Krathzar said. "They want to include other species. The Keltharn have expressed interest. So have the Primus Collective. What you started here, brother, it is growing into something bigger than either of us imagined." Danny thought about that. Other species learning from each other, breaking down the barriers of assumption and prejudice. It was a good dream. "Then we should do it," Danny said. "We should include anyone who wants to learn." Over the next few years, the program did exactly that. Korvax Station became known as a place where different species came to train together and learn from each other. The Vrelnir taught combat and survival. Humans taught adaptability and problem-solving. The Keltharn, a species of brilliant scientists, taught strategy and analysis. The Primus Collective, synthetic beings, taught logic and efficiency. Danny coordinated it all. He was young for such a responsibility, but no one questioned his ability anymore. He had proven himself in the way that mattered most. The pendant of Thraknor never left his neck. It became a symbol recognized across dozens of worlds. When diplomats met Danny, they saw the tooth and knew immediately who he was. The young Terran who had been shamed. The one who had proven that courage and honor transcended species. Amy Fletcher became one of his top assistants. She had a natural talent for understanding different cultures and helping them work together. Chris Porter, the trainee who had doubted her, became one of her closest friends and strongest supporters. 5 years after the hunt, there was a ceremony at Korvax Station. They were dedicating a new wing of the training facility. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species attended. Danny gave a speech, something he had gotten better at with practice. 5 years ago, I came to this station as someone people looked at and saw weakness, Danny told the assembled crowd. I was young, inexperienced, physically small. Every logical assessment said I would fail at anything difficult. But I learned something important. Strength is not one thing. It's not just muscles or combat skills or even intelligence. Real strength is the willingness to try when you might fail. It's helping others when there's no benefit to yourself. It's getting back up when you fall down. It's refusing to judge others by their appearance or your assumptions. He touched the pendant at his neck. A great warrior taught me that. He taught me by being willing to change his own mind. By admitting he was wrong. That took more courage than any hunt. Krathzar stood in the front row, his 4 eyes bright with pride. After the ceremony, beings from many species came to speak with Danny. They wanted advice, wanted to share their own stories, wanted to be part of what was being built at Korvax Station. Danny didn't sleep that night. He made a small camp between 2 large rocks and kept a fire going until dawn. Every sound in the jungle made him jump. Every shadow could have been the Krail beast coming back. But somehow he survived until morning. When light returned, Danny continued tracking. His body hurt everywhere. The higher gravity made every movement feel like he was wearing weights. His muscles screamed in protest, but he pushed forward. By midday of the second day, Danny had learned some things. The Krail beast was smart. It doubled back on its own trail. It used water to hide its scent. It moved through areas where tracking was hardest. This wasn't just an animal. It was a clever predator that knew it was being hunted. Danny also learned things about himself. He was tougher than he thought. When he fell, he got back up. When he lost the trail, he backtracked and found it again. When his water ran low, he found a stream. He was adapting. On the third day, everything changed. Danny was following fresh tracks through a dense part of the jungle when he heard a sound that made his blood turn cold. It was a roar, deep and full of rage. Then came the unmistakable sounds of fighting. Metal hitting something hard. The screech of the Krail beast. Danny ran toward the noise, pushing through the thick plants. He burst into a small clearing and saw something that stopped him in his tracks. Krathzar was fighting not one, but two Krail beasts. The legendary hunter was in trouble. One of his arms hung limp at his side. A deep gash across his torso leaked the dark blood of his species. His spear was broken in half on the ground. He only had his blade now, and he was backed against a rocky wall with nowhere to run. The two Krail beasts circled him, working together. They were about to finish him off. Every logical thought in Danny's head told him to run. These creatures had nearly beaten the greatest Vrelnir hunter. What could Danny possibly do? He would just die along with Krathzar. But Danny didn't run, he didn't even think about it. He just acted. Danny charged forward, screaming at the top of his lungs. He raised his spear and threw it with every bit of strength he had. The spear flew through the air and struck one of the Krail beasts in the shoulder. It wasn't a killing blow, but it made the creature roar in pain and anger. The beast spun around to face this new threat. Its 6 yellow-green eyes fixed on Danny. It forgot about Krathzar and focused on the small human who had dared to hurt it. Danny pulled out his knife. It looked pathetically small compared to the massive predator charging toward him. He ran, leading the beast away from the wounded Vrelnir. The Krail beast was faster than Danny, stronger, more dangerous, but Danny was smaller and could fit through spaces the beast couldn't. He ran between trees that were close together. He jumped over rocks and ducked under low branches. The beast followed, destroying everything in its path, getting more and more angry. Danny's mind raced. He couldn't outrun this thing forever. He needed a plan. He needed something. Anything that could give him an advantage. Then he remembered something he had noticed the day before. A cliff edge, a drop-off into a ravine. It wasn't far from here. Danny changed direction, running toward where he thought the cliff was. His lungs burned. His legs felt like they were made of lead. The Krail beast was right behind him, so close he could hear its breathing. He saw the cliff edge ahead. This was going to be close. Danny ran straight at the edge. At the last second, he dropped and slid under a fallen log that lay across the path. He was small enough to fit. The Krail beast wasn't. The creature tried to jump over the log but misjudged the distance. Its front legs cleared the log, but its back legs caught. It tumbled forward straight toward the cliff edge. Danny grabbed onto a tree root, stopping himself just before the edge. The Krail beast wasn't so lucky. It went over the side, roaring as it fell. There was a crash and then silence. Danny lay there gasping for breath. He had done it. He had actually done it. But there was no time to celebrate. Krathzar was still fighting the other Krail beast. Danny forced himself to stand. He ran back toward the clearing, grabbing his spear from where it had fallen. When he got back, he saw Krathzar on his knees. The Vrelnir warrior was still fighting, but he was losing. The second Krail beast was about to make its final attack. Danny didn't have time to think of a clever plan. He just charged again, spear raised. This time he aimed for the beast's back leg. The spear struck home and the creature stumbled. It turned on Danny, giving Krathzar a moment to breathe. The hunter and the young human fought together. Krathzar, even wounded, was still deadly with his blade. Danny darted in and out, using his smaller size to avoid the beast's attacks while landing small cuts wherever he could. The fight felt like it lasted forever. In reality, it was probably only a few minutes. But finally, Krathzar's blade found the creature's throat. The Krail beast collapsed and went still. Silence fell over the clearing. Both Danny and Krathzar stood there, breathing hard. Then Krathzar's legs gave out and he fell to his knees. Danny rushed to his side. The Vrelnir's wounds were bad, very bad. The gash across his torso was deep and he was losing a lot of blood. "You came back," Krathzar said. His voice was weak. "You could have run. You should have run." "No," Danny said, already pulling medical supplies from his pack. "I couldn't leave you." "Why?" Krathzar asked. "I showed you no kindness. I expected you to fail and die. Why would you risk your life for me?" Danny pressed bandages against the worst wounds, trying to stop the bleeding. His hands were shaking, but he kept working. Because it's the right thing to do, Danny said. You're a person. Your life matters. I don't care if you're human or Vrelnir or anything else. I'm not going to watch someone die when I can help them. Krathzar stared at him with all four amber eyes. You have no strength of body, young human. But you have something else. Something I have rarely seen in all my years of hunting. You have strength of spirit. Danny managed to stop most of the bleeding, but Krathzar needed real medical help. The young human looked around the clearing. They were at least a day's travel from the entrance to the wilderness zone. Maybe more with Krathzar injured. Can you walk? Danny asked. No, my leg is damaged. I cannot put weight on it. Danny looked at the Vrelnir warrior. Krathzar was huge, probably close to 400 pounds. There was no way Danny could carry him. Then I'll make a shelter here and go for help, Danny said. That will take too long, Krathzar replied. I will be dead before you return. Not if I can help it, Danny said stubbornly. Over the next few hours, Danny worked like he had never worked before. He used branches and vines to build a shelter over Krathzar, to protect him from the elements. He gathered water and made sure the Vrelnir had enough to drink. He found plants that the station's database said had healing properties, and made crude bandages from them. Krathzar watched him work. You should leave me. Save yourself. That is what any sensible creature would do. Then I guess I'm not sensible, Danny replied, not stopping his work. No, Krathzar agreed. You are something else entirely. You are something I have never encountered before. Night fell again. Danny built a fire and sat next to Krathzar, keeping watch. The Vrelnir's breathing was labored, but he was stable for now. Tell me about your people, Krathzar said quietly. Tell me about humans, so Danny talked. He told the hunter about Earth, about cities and oceans and mountains, about human history, the good and the bad, about how humans were not the strongest or the fastest, but they were stubborn. They didn't give up. They helped each other even when it cost them. We measure strength differently than you do, Danny said. It's not just about who can win a fight. It's about who stands up when they're scared, who helps when it would be easier to walk away, who keeps trying even when everyone says they'll fail. Krathzar was quiet for a long moment. I judged your people wrongly. I judged you wrongly. I saw only weakness where I should have seen courage. You're not the only one, Danny said with a small smile. My own crew thinks I'm weak too. Then they are fools, Krathzar said firmly. I have fought for 40 cycles. I have faced death many times. But never has anyone, Vrelnir or any other species, risked their life for mine the way you have. You had no reason to help me. I gave you nothing but contempt. Yet here you are. Danny kept watch through the night, tending the fire and checking on Krathzar's wounds. The Vrelnir hunter slept fitfully, but he was alive. That was what mattered. Danny was eating breakfast alone in the ship's small dining area when Captain Hart walked in. The captain looked tired, like he hadn't slept well. He poured himself coffee and sat down across from Danny. We got a message from the Vrelnir Council this morning, the captain said. Danny nodded, not sure what to say. He assumed it was more bad news about the trade negotiations. They want to organize a traditional hunt, Captain Hart continued. It's some kind of bonding ritual they do with species they're considering for long-term partnerships. They hunt dangerous game in the wilderness section of the station. That sounds interesting, sir, Danny said, though he didn't see what it had to do with him. The captain took a long drink of his coffee. They want each side to send one representative. They're sending their best hunter, a warrior named Krathzar. He's apparently some kind of legend among their people. Never failed a hunt in his entire life. Danny waited. There was more coming. He could tell by the way the captain was avoiding eye contact. They specifically requested that we send you. The coffee Danny was drinking went down the wrong way. He coughed and sputtered for a moment. Me? Why me? They want to see what you're made of, Captain Hart said bluntly. Or more likely, they want to humiliate us further by watching you fail. Either way, refusing would be a massive insult. It would end any chance of getting those trade routes. Danny felt sick to his stomach. Captain, I've never hunted anything. I don't know the first thing about tracking or survival. I'll fail for sure. Probably, the captain agreed. He wasn't sugarcoating it. But you have two choices. Go and try, or refuse and prove them right about humanity being weak. Either way, you're representing Earth. An hour later, the crew gathered to discuss the situation. Kyle was angry. This is insane, he said. They're going to get the kid killed and we're just going to let it happen? Send me instead. At least I know how to handle myself. It doesn't work that way, Captain Hart replied. They specified Danny. If we send someone else, it's the same as refusing. Lauren looked at Danny with something like pity. Do you even know what a Krail beast is? That's what they hunt in these rituals. It's like a bear mixed with a tiger, mixed with something from a nightmare. 3 Vrelnir hunters have died trying to catch one this year. Danny felt the blood drain from his face. He looked around the room at his crewmates. They all looked back at him with doubt in their eyes. They didn't think he could do it. They didn't even think he would survive. I'll go, Danny said quietly. His voice shook, but he said it anyway. I'll do the hunt. Kyle shook his head. You're going to get yourself killed for nothing, kid. Maybe, Danny said. But at least I won't be a coward. The next morning, a Vrelnir escort came to take Danny to the wilderness section of the station. The habitat ring was a massive enclosed environment, designed to simulate the Vrelnir homeworld. It had jungles, rocky mountains, and even a small desert region. The whole thing was kept at higher gravity than Earth normal. Danny was given basic equipment, a simple spear, a knife, a small pack with water and emergency supplies, and clothes better suited for the jungle environment. Nothing fancy, nothing that would give him an unfair advantage. Waiting for him at the entrance to the wilderness zone was Krathzar. The Vrelnir hunter was the most intimidating being Danny had ever seen. He was at least 7.5 feet tall with chitinous plates that were darker than the other Vrelnir, almost black. His 4 amber eyes seemed to glow in the dim light. Scars covered his plates, each one telling a story of some past battle. He carried a long spear that looked like it had been used to kill many things and a curved blade at his hip. You are the soft one they sent, Krathzar said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The translator in Danny's ear rendered the words with no emotion. Yes, Danny said. There was no point denying it. I am told you have no experience in the hunt, no training in tracking, no skills in survival. That's right. Krathzar studied him for a long moment with all 4 eyes. Then you will die here. Your death will be quick because the Krail beast does not play with its food. Your people will learn shame, but they will also learn the cost of sending weakness to represent them. Danny swallowed hard. Maybe. Or maybe I'll surprise you. The Vrelnir made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. Humans. You have courage even when you have nothing else. I can respect that at least. Krathzar explained the rules of the hunt. They would track and capture a Krail beast. Not kill it, but capture it alive, which was much harder. The beast was somewhere in the wilderness zone, a territory of about 20 square miles. They would hunt it for as long as it took. Days if necessary. Whoever successfully captured the beast first would win. They could use only the weapons they carried and whatever they could make from the environment. One more thing, Krathzar added. The Krail beast is not the only danger. There are other predators in this wilderness. Some are territorial. Some hunt in packs. Stay alert or die. Those are your only options. With that, the hunt began. Danny quickly realized how out of his depth he was. Krathzar moved through the jungle like a shadow, silent and smooth despite his size. His 4 eyes could track multiple things at once. He read signs in the dirt and on the plants that Danny couldn't even see. Danny, on the other hand, crashed through bushes. He tripped over roots. The higher gravity made everything harder. Within an hour, he was sweating heavily and breathing hard. Krathzar had disappeared ahead of him somewhere. Danny was alone in an alien jungle, hunting a creature that could kill him in seconds. He wanted to panic. Every instinct told him to turn around and go back. But he didn't. He kept moving forward. Danny tried to remember everything he had read about tracking, which wasn't much. He looked for broken branches, disturbed dirt. He found what might have been tracks, though he wasn't sure. He followed them anyway. Hours passed. The jungle grew darker as the station's day cycle shifted toward evening. Strange sounds echoed through the trees. Danny's legs ached from the extra gravity. His hands had blisters from gripping the spear too tightly. He stopped to drink water and rest for a moment. That's when he noticed something. A plant nearby had been crushed recently. The leaves were still oozing sap. Something big had passed through here. Danny examined the area more carefully. There were marks on a tree trunk. Deep gouges like claws had scraped down the bark. He followed the trail of damage and found more signs. Broken branches. Disturbed earth. A pattern started to emerge. The Krail beast had passed through here and recently. Danny felt a small surge of hope. Maybe he wasn't completely hopeless at this. He followed the trail as carefully as he could. The signs led him toward a rocky area where the jungle gave way to stone outcroppings. Night fell completely. The wilderness zone had artificial moons that provided some light, but it was still dark. Danny knew he should make camp and wait for morning, but he didn't want to lose the trail. He kept going, moving slowly and carefully. That's when he heard it. A sound in the darkness ahead. Something moving, something big. Danny froze. His heart pounded. He gripped his spear with both hands. The sound came again, closer this time, and then he saw eyes reflecting the moonlight. Not 4 eyes like a Vrelnir, 6 eyes glowing yellow-green in the dark. The Krail beast. It was massive, easily the size of a horse, but built low to the ground like a crocodile. It had 6 powerful legs, a long tail with spikes at the end, and a mouth full of teeth that looked designed for tearing meat. Its 6 eyes fixed on Danny, and it made a sound somewhere between a growl and a hiss. Danny's entire body wanted to run. Every cell screamed at him to turn and flee, but running from a predator was the worst thing you could do. He knew that much at least. He stood his ground, spear ready, facing down a creature that had killed experienced Vrelnir warriors. The Krail beast took a step toward him, then another. It was testing him, seeing if he would break and run. Danny didn't run. His legs shook. His hands trembled. But he stood there. The beast tilted its head, studying the strange small creature that didn't flee. For a moment, they simply stared at each other in the moonlight. Then the Krail beast turned and disappeared into the jungle, leaving Danny standing alone in the dark, still alive. Danny Cooper stood in the cargo bay of the Horizon's Edge, checking equipment cases for the 3rd time that morning. His hands shook slightly as he worked. He was 19 years old, and this was his first real mission off Earth. The ship was heading to Korvax Station, a huge trading post run by aliens called the Vrelnir. Danny was small for his age. He stood just 5 feet 7 inches tall and weighed maybe 140 pounds. His brown hair was cut short, and his green eyes always seemed a bit nervous. He had joined the space program through a youth training initiative. The program was supposed to give young people experience with alien relations. But so far, the only thing Danny had experienced was being treated like he didn't belong. The other crew members made sure he knew it too. Kyle Bennett, the ship's security officer, was the worst. Kyle was tall, muscular, and had served in the Colonial Defense Forces for 5 years. He walked past Danny in the cargo bay and shook his head. "Try not to drop anything, kid," Kyle said with a smirk. "We can't afford to look stupid in front of the bugs." Danny bit his lip and said nothing. He had learned that talking back only made things worse. Kyle called the Vrelnir bugs because of their appearance. The aliens had hard plates covering parts of their bodies, kind of like insect shells, but Danny had read about them in the database. The Vrelnir were not insects at all. They were intelligent, honorable, and very dangerous when provoked. Lauren Shaw, the ship's navigator, walked in carrying a data pad. She glanced at Danny and then looked at Kyle. "Is he coming to the meeting?" Lauren asked, as if Danny couldn't hear her. "Captain's orders," Kyle replied. "Someone has to carry the equipment." Lauren sighed. "Great, the Vrelnir are going to love that. We're trying to negotiate better trade routes, and we show up with a teenager who looks like a strong wind could knock him over." Danny felt his face grow hot. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but what could he say? They were right in a way. He had no combat training. He had never been in a real fight. He was just a kid from Ohio who had scored well on some tests and thought space would be exciting. Captain Gregory Hart entered the cargo bay. He was a stern man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been running supply routes for 20 years and had seen every kind of situation. "Listen up," the captain said. "We dock in 30 minutes. The Vrelnir Council is expecting us at 1400 hours station time. That's 2 hours from now. I want everyone in dress uniforms. I want everyone on their best behavior. These negotiations are important for Earth. We need those trade routes through Vrelnir space." He looked at Danny. "Cooper, you'll carry the sample cases and stay at the back of the group. Don't speak unless spoken to. Clear?" "Yes, sir," Danny said quietly. The captain left. Kyle laughed and clapped Danny on the shoulder hard enough to make him stumble. "Don't worry, kid. Just be invisible. That's what you're good at." 2 hours later, Danny followed the crew through the massive corridors of Korvax Station. The station was incredible. It was a huge wheel spinning in space, creating artificial gravity. The corridors were wide and tall, built for species much larger than humans. The walls were made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. They reached the grand hall where the meeting would take place. Danny's breath caught in his throat. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up at least 50 feet. At the far end sat 5 Vrelnir council members on raised platforms. The Vrelnir were terrifying to look at. They stood over 7 feet tall with thick, muscular bodies. Hard chitinous plates covered their arms, backs, and parts of their legs. They had 4 amber-colored eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on their faces. Their mouths had mandibles that clicked when they spoke. Each one looked like they could tear a human apart without much effort. The human delegation walked forward. Danny stayed at the back carrying 2 heavy equipment cases. His arms were already getting tired, but he didn't dare put them down. Captain Hart began speaking, introducing the human delegation and explaining the purpose of their visit. The Vrelnir listened without much expression. Their 4 eyes tracked every movement. Then one of them spoke. His name was Thrak, according to the translator implant that fed words into Danny's ear. Thrak was covered in scars and looked older than the others. "Humans," Thrak said, his voice coming out as a series of clicks and growls that the translator turned into English. "You come seeking passage through our space. You wish to trade with worlds beyond our territory, yet you bring before us this small, weak creature." Thrak pointed directly at Danny. Danny froze. Every eye in the room turned to look at him. His heart pounded so hard he thought everyone could hear it. "This is what humanity sends?" Thrak continued. "A soft-skinned child who has clearly never seen battle? Who has never proven himself? We Vrelnir value strength and honor above all things. What honor is there in sending someone so obviously weak to represent your species?" Other Vrelnir council members made clicking sounds that the translator identified as laughter. Danny felt his face burning. He wanted to disappear. He wanted to be anywhere but here. Captain Hart tried to redirect the conversation. "Council members, young Cooper is here as a support technician. He is not part of the diplomatic team, yet he stands in our hall," another Vrelnir said. "He wears your uniform. He represents your people whether you intend it or not. It speaks poorly of humanity that you would bring such weakness before us." Kyle and Lauren shifted uncomfortably. Danny could feel their embarrassment. But worse than that, he could feel their agreement. They thought the Vrelnir were right. They had said as much themselves. The meeting continued, but it went poorly. The Vrelnir offered very limited trade concessions. They seemed uninterested in what the humans had to offer. When the delegation finally left the grand hall, the mood was dark. "That was a disaster," Lauren muttered to Kyle as they walked back to the ship. "They didn't take us seriously at all. Can you blame them?" Kyle replied. "We showed up looking like we couldn't defend ourselves in a kindergarten fight." Danny walked behind them, still carrying the cases. No one offered to help. No one spoke to him. He was invisible again, just like Kyle had said. Except when it mattered, when the aliens were judging them, then suddenly Danny was very visible. Then suddenly he represented all of humanity. Back on the ship, Danny went straight to his quarters. The room was tiny, barely big enough for a bed and a small desk. He put the equipment cases down and sat on his bed. His arms ached. His pride hurt worse. He pulled up his personal communicator and thought about sending a message home. But what would he say? That everyone was right about him? That he didn't belong out here? That he was just a weak kid who made humanity look bad? Danny looked at his reflection in the small mirror on the wall. He saw what everyone else saw. A thin, young face. Soft hands that had never done hard labor. Eyes that looked scared most of the time. Maybe they were all right. Maybe he was weak. Maybe he should never have left Earth. He lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside his small window, he could see the stars. They looked cold and distant. Space had seemed so exciting when he was back on Earth, sitting in a classroom and dreaming of adventure. But reality was different. Reality was being mocked by aliens and pitied by his own crew. Reality was carrying equipment and being told to stay quiet and invisible. Danny closed his eyes. Tomorrow they would finish their business at the station and head back to Earth. He would file a request for transfer. Maybe he could get assigned to something on Earth, something safe and quiet where no one would judge him for being small and weak. The stars could belong to someone else. Someone stronger, someone braver, someone who wasn't him.